Okay, so we are live, and before anybody begins to panic, my beard is not an indication that SHTF is going to be tomorrow. So I don't want anyone to freak out, but I know that some of you are going to be very concerned based on one of my recent videos. So calm down. It's okay that the beard is not here right this second because I actually had to make some video content related to wearing gas masks and shooting stuff. And I thought, this could be a good time. So in order to be a little bit more precise with my review of the products, I wanted to make sure I could get a proper seal and ditch the beard for a day or two. So if you guys can see me and if you can hear me, please let me know in the live chat. I see a 5x5 coming through here from Welcome to My Life. Thank you for telling me that we're doing all right here in the sense of audio and video. I got to stop saying looking good and sounding good because I feel like that's a little bit narcissistic. So listen, Kevin Freres, your beard is better than mine. I mean, that is definitely a point of view situation. So we'll have to see on that one. But thank you so much. Kevin Brown says, great 90s look, and I agree. I am trying to be the bad guy from every movie in the 90s possible. So I'm hopefully, living up to that hype at some point. Listen, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot. And so I felt like we had to have this conversation. We have to talk to each other. We have to network and do a better job of building this community. With everything that's happening in the world right now, we have to understand that there's a lot on the line and that the consequences of what's going on right now will be catastrophic down the road. It doesn't really matter how this whole thing plays out at this exact point in time. Whichever path these countries decide to take, we're still going to be hit with the remnants of the decisions that are being made right now. So Airborne says, looking good, Mr. Sheffield. And I'll take that as a compliment. I lived in a house where people watched The Nanny, and that was maybe unfortunate at times, but here we are. So what I will say is that we are in a situation where people are beginning to panic. And when I say that, I don't mean you. I don't mean this community. I don't mean people who generally go out of their way to look for prepared mindset style content. I'm talking about the average person right now. Josh Hagan, thank you so much. Game over. I'm not sure about that. Trust me on this one. But what I will say is that people are definitely getting scared, and we're seeing it on a mass status, basically. We're seeing a lot of people all react in the similar fashion, and we're seeing a lot of the same hysteria that we saw back in March of 2020 start to grab hold. Now, without the direct interaction of the governing body, aka the federal government saying you can't go outside, you have to stay indoors and do all this stuff, there's a little bit less of a immediacy factor. But I think we'll see the ramp up of this very soon because people are definitely concerned, and the amount of talk that I'm hearing surrounding the idea of a WW3 situation more so than even just what's happening over there or what could happen here. I hear a lot of talk about that. And I hear a lot of talk about, possible nuclear scenarios more so than probably anything else right now, which is concerning to me because that means the general population and the average person has their mind on the worst case scenario rather than the different possible outcomes that could occur during this whole situation. So definitely something for us to keep in mind. And we have to understand that being ahead of the general population helps us be better prepared because we know once they catch wind of everything that's going on is when things get very difficult. So let's talk a little bit. So we're going to start just, going through some stuff. And of course, guys, we're here, we're talking about preparedness. We're going to talk about the whole situation overseas, but we're going to talk about other things too, because there's still more going on than just that. And then we're just going to talk about some of the things you got to be concerned about for yourself in the sense of what you're digesting and what you're receiving in the sense of information and intel, and the fact that a lot of people are out there pushing a lot of narratives. And you have to understand that during any kind of wartime scenario, regardless of whether or not it's the United States or any other country, at this point in time with a globally connected social media interface where people have the ability to share information or even just share, photos at an immediate rate, we're going to find ourselves with a lot of interesting intel and a lot of information that may or may not be exactly what it seems to be. So I think we all have to be very prepared for that. So let's go ahead and get into this conversation tonight. And the reason why I titled tonight's live stream, "This is what we've been prepping for," is because we are on the precipice of things getting really bad. Whether or not we see any additional action in the sense of what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia right now, we will have things a little bit more difficult here for ourselves regardless. And that's just because of the nature of the beast and what's happening. And with all of the situations that we have been dealing with over the last 2 years, if anyone in this chat right now or watching this, re-upload has any idea that the supply chain and the economy and everything that was suffering for the last 2 years can just easily handle the additional burden of what's going on right now in Ukraine, you're naive and you haven't been paying much attention, because this is something that can break the camel's back. And in many ways, it most likely will. I feel like we're finding ourselves in a scenario where we have turned the corner, and where that takes us is a different story compared to the fork that's in the road coming up ahead. But either way, now that the corner has been turned, there's no going back around it, and things are just going to keep moving forward in this, what I would probably call a negative progression at this time. So let's talk about it. All right. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing some stuff. And listen, I am not going to sit here and proclaim to be some kind of military analyst or wartime expert or something along those lines. But these are just things we're going to talk about really quick, and kind of go through some of the stuff that's going on and apply it to preparedness to make sure that we have better strategy moving forward with what's going on. And law of the minimum, it is a map of Middle Earth. I know a lot of people ask about that, but it happened to be I guess a tapestry that we had here, and I needed something to cover up the window behind me when it was a little bit too light out in the middle of the summer, because I don't know if you know this, but where I live at 11 o'clock at night, it can still be sunny out in North Dakota sometimes. So let's talk about what's happening, all right? And I will talk to you about the rest of what you asked there as well, law of the minimum, because there is a lot of that going on, and we're going to talk about that here soon. So this just came out. Ukraine seeks an immediate ceasefire and Russian withdrawal within first direct talks during their current situation. And obviously, these are all just things that were being reported, right? So obviously, everything's with a grain of salt. We're trying our best to kind of sift through all the different information. And obviously, CBS News is a very mainstream media outlet. So, but at the end of the day, the idea is that what they're trying to put out there, Ukraine is saying they want an immediate ceasefire. And I don't expect to see that, and neither should you. And of course, that's just great things to say, regardless of what you actually want, whether or not that's their actual intention for asking for a ceasefire, which there could be reasons for why that might not actually be the case. Either way, it sounds good, and it's great to put out on the world stage that this is what you're asking for, is a ceasefire, okay? It's not asking for a retreat. It's not asking for a withdrawal. It's asking for a ceasefire, which basically is just a pause that doesn't really accomplish anything at the end of the day. So Commander Corvus Corax, Nevermore, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And honestly, like I said, right now, especially with everything going on, everybody, do what you need to do to get ahead, and do what you guys need to do to make sure you're prepped and ready for this possibility of the whole scenario getting a little out of hand. Now, before we move on to the next thing, I want to just share, because it's kind of a lot of the stuff is going to be relevant and related, and then we're going to talk about some other things that are not so related to what's happening, and we'll kind of go full circle with this whole thing tonight. But I want everyone to know that there is a lot of moving parts right now around the world when it comes to logistics and the supply chain, and things are getting very difficult. So if you want to support the channel, great. But if you need to get more preps and you want to do that stuff instead, please do, because right now is definitely one of those red flag scenarios where, even though we try to prepare and avoid panic buying and everything else like everyone else, we also have to be realistic and honest with ourselves as preparedness-minded people to say, this is not looking that great, and this could turn out to be something much worse. So am I going to be inactive? Of course not. You're going to be proactive. So make sure you're taking care of yourself and doing what you have to do. All right. So let's see. I am going to move forward here. We're going to go at a relative quick pace. And I do want you guys to also understand that I am a little under the weather tonight. So I'm not trying to make an excuse here, but I'm going to try my best to kind of maintain focus and work through this with you all, because I appreciate every one of you being here, and I'm not going to miss this just because I'm feeling a little sick. I want to make sure that we all have these conversations, especially in these very troubling times. So This is Al Jazeera, live tracker of what's going on. Who knows how up to date it is at this point. But here they give us the generalized map of what we're being told, where you can see there's a lot of Russian incursion throughout different parts of where they border, of course, through Crimea as well. And then one thing we have to keep in mind is that Belarus is supposedly looking to get involved here very soon. And obviously, you can see a lot of activity at the Belarus border, as well as, with Russian border there connected to that Russian-controlled territory. So we can see a lot of that moving forward. But this is just something I wanted to share with you to kind of just give a quick update as to where things currently stand. This is at least what they are reporting, I guess is what you would say. And, well, this whole economic backlash thing that everybody's talking about as being, our most effective leverage tool, which is something I'm not sure if it's true or not. It doesn't seem to be the best and most effective leverage, but we'll see how this turns out. But at the end of the day, we also have this whole situation saying that economic backlash against Russia mounts after talks with Ukraine and with no resolution, which why would you expect a resolution within one session of talking? You wouldn't. So at the end of the day, things aren't moving forward the way they want them to. Here's a cat in a backpack, and these are just things that we should be paying attention to, apparently. Now, I'm sorry if I end up sounding like either cynical or slightly negative about some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, but there's a lot of just stuff out there right now. And one thing that I will admit, and that maybe some of you can relate to, is that I've been slightly overwhelmed with everything that's happening, right? There's so much going on that it's overwhelming, especially if you're in my shoes where you feel the need to try to share some information and try to stay ahead of what's happening and also try to be relevant to what is going on in the sense of helping people actually better themselves in the situation we're currently in. It can be very overwhelming because there's just so much to digest and so many moving parts. And then at the end of the day, you find out that, some of it wasn't really relevant or some of it didn't pan out the way it was supposed to or whatever else it might be. And then some of it is definitely fake. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that because there is a ton of propaganda anytime there's a wartime situation. And now that I said the prop word, which I know is like an issue for some reason because, why wouldn't it be? But here we are. Okay, so in the interest of the internet, we are not sharing it. We are just discussing it. So just keep that in mind, whoever you are watching. All right, so Airborne says, do you think Switzerland supporting Ukraine will lead them to joining NATO and influence the other non-NATO countries to join? I mean, there's a lot of possibilities involved, but at the end of the day, I don't think we're going to see new memberships suddenly develop overnight just because that is a provocation. And at the same time, you have you basically have opened a door at that point in time for any other country who might not qualify to just try to send that application. And then at the same time, you have public opinion then turning into why aren't they allowed and why are these people being gatekeepers? So I don't see this happening like overnight or turning into that, okay? And Adam in Alaska says, I look thin with no beard. I guess I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you. All right, so let's see. Now let's talk about some other stuff going on, okay? So we have this huge convoy heading into or towards Kiev, which a lot of people are saying Kyiv now, and I don't know how I feel about it because my entire life, and from what I remember, even back in 2014 when some of this was happening, was always Kiev. So you guys tell me, and maybe someone Ukrainian here is in the chat that can let us know the right way to say it. At the end of the day, I'm just not exactly sure. So that's why I wanted to say that. But either way, huge convoy on its way to Kiev, right? Or Kyiv, I don't know. And it's 17 miles long, and we have all this information, and we have everybody sending photos and stuff like this. And the interesting part about these situations, and this is something you should really consider, here we are in the age of information, and we are privy to intel, satellite photos, and imagery that we would have never had access to prior to the last 10 years, probably. So what we're seeing is things that would have been reserved for a military strategist's table. Instead, we're seeing it on the internet published in a news article just saying, look at this convoy. And it's a little bit, I guess it makes me slightly uneasy because it feels like we're so just gluttonous when it comes to information that we'll digest anything that gets sent our way. And at the end of the day, it almost becomes irrelevant because there's so much of it that this 17-mile-long convoy won't really make a difference to us by tomorrow. So these are just things to keep in mind. Now, The other thing about this is that if it really is a 17-mile long convoy of tanks and armored vehicles, which is what it's being reported as, then we should also keep in mind that that is a really large force that they're sending towards Kyiv, which I believe by now, look like based on when this article was produced, would probably have gotten much closer or already arrived at this point in time. So these are things to consider. And I see I got some great mods here. Hello, Prepper Now. Thanks for being here. And then Jeb Reed says, rumor is that there's a Russian freedom convoy heading towards D.C. to protest mandates. All right. And, interesting enough, Jeb Reed, we will talk about some of that here very soon as well. But there's just a lot going on. And one thing I will say is that, I keep in mind grain of salt whenever you're thinking about any of this stuff. I mean, you almost just have to, because it's just there's a lot, and I don't know what else to say about it. It just feels like there's a lot. But okay, so let's move on. And then in the chat, if everybody is kind of concerned, I mean, I'm going to put a poll here, and you guys don't have to answer. I don't care if you want to, maintain your OPSEC and you don't want to answer these questions. And I'm going to go ahead and type while talking, because that's just something I try to do to seem like I'm able to multitask, and really I'm not. So I just want you guys to let me know what your thoughts are with this question, and that way you can tell me if it's a good, if we are in this situation or not. Like, is this right around the corner? Okay. And I want everyone to kind of just let me know your thoughts. I don't necessarily need to ask this question in any kind of like certain, tone regarding the situation. What I want to know is what everybody's thoughts are, because of the public outcry right now of this being such a huge possibility. Now, do I think it's possible? 100%. I'll never take anything off the table just because of my own personal bias. I've tried really hard to rid myself of confirmation bias and to rid myself of normalcy bias and all the things that definitely hurt our ability to find the truth and find information. And honestly, it's very difficult sometimes, because especially when you involve things like politics, it's very easy to be like, look, I don't buy that crap because that's the person who said it. But at the end of the day, I have to try to remove some of that from the factor in order to be a little bit more informed. So it sucks sometimes. I'm not going to lie, everybody. So let's talk next. Okay. Now here's something that is actually something we can be affected by. And I want you guys to pay attention to this one, because what we have to keep in mind is that we are preparing. We're here to prepare. And I don't know why I clapped like that, but it felt good at the time. But we have to figure out what's relevant to us directly, not just, oh my gosh, look what's happening over there, those poor people, right? Of course, we feel that way. We have those emotions. And of course, I would assume most of us here don't want to see any actual hot conflict. So what they're experiencing over there is terrible. But what I will say is that we have to then take from what's happening there and say, what does this mean for us directly, in the sense of my ability to be better prepared? And a lot of people have, well, let's just say, Empress Kimberly says we are already in World War III. It started in 2020. Interesting, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But what we have to remember is that there is a war of ideology at play. There's a war for your mind. And when the information age, when it comes to the internet, people are literally trying to sway public opinion almost more than they're actually trying to win a real battle. These are real things nowadays. Data is more valuable than the things we're fighting over, aka oil, resources, money, food, right? Data is the new gold, and that is something that they really want to use to their advantage, and they are doing very often. Okay, so let's talk about things here. We have another little article to pull up that will be more relevant to you and I, no matter how we want to look at it. And this is more along the lines of what I'm referring to when I say catastrophic consequences, okay? Understand that this hurts our economy, it hurts their economy, it hurts every economy in the world. When you remove Russia from the global economy, I believe it's like the 11th largest producer of goods, basically. If you want to just look at it like that, if you want to rate economies in the world, Russia is like number 11. Okay, take that out of the equation. That's a huge chunk of the economy for the global banking system just gone suddenly. Okay, now this is telling us that this whole situation will compound supply chain woes. Yes, they will. And the supply chain is still not better. We have not fixed the supply chain. We have not gotten past all the problems we've had over the last 2 years. And yet this situation occurs. So this could easily be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm more concerned about what the situation is doing to the supply chain than I am about the concept of a possible nuclear war. Is that a possibility? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not, but it can happen. This is going to happen and is happening already and will affect you no matter which way you want to look at it. So this is what you need to be paying attention to. So this Ukraine crisis compounds supply chain woes as global companies shut shop amid invasion. So companies like Coca-Cola, Nestle, Carlsberg, Japan Tobacco, and all these other companies are actually having to shut down their factories, their manufacturing plants, and everything they have in Ukraine. And they are also then obviously losing workers and losing the ability to pay people. And the next thing you know, it just snowballs into more and more economic issues. So these are companies that we all know well here, but now we're seeing over there having to shut up shop. And we are already in a situation where these companies have taken a huge hit over the last few years. Not all of them we know. But what I'm saying is that basically every time something like this happens, it creates another ripple and another X factor in the supply chain issues. And then you have more problems down the road. And a lot of the problems that we anticipated in March of 2020 didn't actually show up until 2021. So don't expect to see these things happening tomorrow, but we are seeing some of these things happening right away, aka gas prices and things of that nature. So look, these are just things that are happening right now. Shipping rates are going up. Rail transport's affected. Food and drinks are affected. Car makers are affected. We already know the chip shortage is killing that industry. I have a friend who works at a very large dealership, and they basically told me they have no vehicles to sell. They have like 18 new cars on the lot, and usually they have a lot more. So this is just what's happening, and this is what will actually hurt both you and I, and this is what we should be paying attention to more so than this talk of like a nuclear situation. Will that happen? We don't know. This is literally happening and will affect you. So I want to keep those things in mind. Prioritizing the threat level. The threat level here is in regards to inflation, in all honesty, and our inability to get resources. The next level of threat would be, escalation of conflict, either, involving our countries or at least, maybe seeing some fringe elements take out some certain, let's just say, aggression. Okay. So there's a lot of things that we could be worried about, but either way. Okay. Christopher Alexander says we're heading into a Red Dawn situation. And, I did get this poster a while back because you guys voted on it. And it's interesting that we find ourselves here in this situation. What I will say is that, of course, in Ukraine, there is a lot of that going on when it comes to what the civilians there are dealing with. So here's a thing. Okay. We're going to start talking about this right now. And it happened to just be the next thing I was going to jump to anyway. So good for you for bringing that up. But, okay, here's what we're seeing a lot of, right? Citizens are defiant. They're taking up arms to defend their country against Russia, which is great, which is what I would expect from any free country. It's what I would expect from any, military age fighting person who is capable of bringing some kind of asset to the front lines and trying to make their country maintain its sovereignty. I expect this from all of you if this ever happened here in the United States or wherever you're from. And of course, there's limitations to everybody, and not everybody's in a situation where they can just sign up to go run off and fight a battle. But at the end of the day, the reaction of the civilians in Ukraine has been a positive one, at least in the sense of what I would expect people to do regarding these actions. Now, the one thing I want to mention about this, okay, and here you see things like, we will give weapons to anyone who wants to defend the country and all those kinds of things. And then you see this here, which is like, I learned to use a Kalashnikov and prepare to bear arms, right? So we see all of this stuff coming out like, here we are, we're doing the thing, we're gonna save our country, and that's great. This is what I want to see. This is what I want us all to be like if this ever happens to us. We reference Red Dawn and Wolverines and stuff like that on a regular basis for this exact possibility, right? We just talk about it as more of like a fantasy situation, but for these people, it's real life. Here's the thing, okay? Please keep this in mind. There's a lot of propaganda going on, and it's not all anti-Russian propaganda. There's always going to be both sides of the aisle playing the game. And what we've seen so far, we're seeing things about the ghost of Kiev, right? We're seeing things about, a previous beauty queen gearing up, and going to battle and all these things. And at the end of the day, you have to keep in mind that these Instagram quality photo ops that are going on in a war zone tell us a couple things. One, there's a likelihood of them being at the least probably exaggerated. And number two, we have to also remember that there literally are people in this world right now, no matter where you live or who's around you, that will prioritize clout over what they have going on in the sense of a war any day of the week, and will love to post to TikTok and to Instagram and everything else in the middle of a battle because that will get views, and they know that. So you guys need to keep this in mind, because this is a real situation where people are going to exploit the fact that they are in this war zone to try to gain clout and try to gain a following. I'm not going to lie to you. I honestly think that's an issue that we have to watch out for when it comes to some of this stuff. Staged events, exaggerations, and everything else is the same game of propaganda as anything that might come out of Russia, as anything that might be anti-Russia, whatever it might be. Just keep those things in mind. Do I promote and support what the civilians of Ukraine are doing right now in regards to defending their homeland? Of course I do, because I expect all of us to do the same thing if this ever happened to any of our countries as well. But I do want to digest all of the stuff coming out surrounding those stories with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of fluff out there during these times, and we're seeing it all 24/7 with their social media and mainstream media news cycle that never goes to sleep. There's going to be a lot of it for you to digest and get really excited about when they want you to, okay? And public opinion's huge, and public opinion right now, if you ask the average person here in the United States, is that, like, basically look at Facebook. You have the profile thing that's "We're with Ukraine." You put a flag on it, and now you did your job, and you have nothing else to do in the sense of support, right? Because that's how they like to do things over there on the old FB. But just throwing this out there, okay? I'm not saying everything's fake. I'm just saying to be careful about what you buy into and what you believe in regarding a lot of this stuff, because that's what we're going to get a lot of right now during these times, okay? So let's talk. Whoa, what's going on here? Okay, I got to share this with you guys real quick, just because things get weird sometimes. and now in this modern day and age, I'm like, this is weird, because of what's happening right now. This is what my screen looks like right now. Is it not going to do it? Come on. Oh my gosh, this is so weird. Look, it won't even show you guys. Okay. Why? Why won't it show you? Luckily, I am a little bit crafty. I will go ahead and I will make it show you. Hold on a second. Let's see if I can get this to go. Okay. This is what we're talking about when it comes to Belarus, okay? This page just had something weird going on, though. So give me 1 second, because I will produce a visual for you guys so you can just see it. But with everything surrounding the idea of cyber attacks and everything else going on, when I'm seeing these weird denial of service situations or these weird web page not found scenarios suddenly popping up, which have never been an issue for me before in the last, 3 years, then I start to get a little bit, I guess the word is skeptical about why it's happening, more so than just assuming it's like some kind of generalized randomized error. Doesn't seem to be the case anymore, at least in my opinion. So I am getting this to you all just so you can see it, and bear with me here, because I somehow managed to operate Photoshop while also being on a live stream, which I didn't think I was even capable of, to be honest with you. Okay, so Belarus doing that stuff. Got it. Definitely an issue. Let's see here. I want to show you guys this now if I can. I can. And then one thing we have to keep in mind is that Belarus and Russia are partners, right? They are with each other. It's not going to be, a big deal for them to work together when it comes to these things. But Belarus is willing to host their nuclear weapons, which puts those nuclear weapons much closer to Ukraine than they were before. And we also know that, obviously they have a huge border with Ukraine, which means that that's that many more points of entry for the Russian forces to utilize. And I just see this thing getting worse because of this, I guess you would say, willingness to aid in this whole situation. Okay. That's what my concern would be, I guess, is that we are finding ourselves where other countries are kind of willing to just, go with it at this point. And this whole thing is actually proven to be a little more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But I think we got it. We got it. Okay. Now, hopefully I can jump back here in the chat soon, because I have been kind of distracted while trying to get this whole thing to work. Come on now. We can do it. Huh. All right. I think this will work. There. So this is what I saw. Snap, something went wrong while displaying this web page, right? So now this could be a million things, but all I wanted to do was share that with you guys to give you just something about the fact that this is all happening. You know what I mean? Like these things are actually happening, and it's becoming more and more regular. And especially when I'm looking into information surrounding this certain conflict, this is seeming to happen more often. So do I think that there's some kind of malicious cyber attack going on right now against media that is covering Russia in a negative light? I don't necessarily think so, but I am keeping an eye on it, and the frequency that it keeps happening has me at least a little bit interested, because honestly, like, what's the likelihood of this continually happening over and over and over again when I haven't dealt with it for the last 3 years? You guys let me know, okay? Allie Key says, playing Fallout 76 and watching your stream. All right, well, you know, Fallout 76 is not one I actually jumped into just because I just stuck with Fallout 4 and didn't go past there, I guess, when it came to moving on to 76. But who knows? Maybe we'll find ourselves in a Fallout situation here sooner than we thought, and that would be a very terrible thing. I do not want to be a vault dweller. Now, let's see here. Look, there's a lot going on. Like I said, we have to really pay attention. So this Belarus thing, I mean, they're partners in crime. It's going to just happen. I think that they'll get involved, but however you want to look at it is, you know, a different story. Like, how will they be involved? Or will it just be Russia driving through their country to get to where they need to go? I mean, it's whatever you want to look at it as. But at this point in time, just assume their involvement, because there's no reason not to, okay? Now, here's something I want to share, okay? While all this is going on, suddenly people don't care anymore, right? Grisio Mimo said it's my browser that failed in that situation. That might be true, but even the browsers have you know, security failures at times. So I'm just find it interesting that this kind of is upticking in the sense that things not working properly. But this whole trucker convoy, right, guys? This is actually still a thing, but we're not talking about it anymore, are we? In fact, it was actually gaining a lot of traction and gaining a lot of support over in Canada. And then they had a really authoritarian crackdown on what was going on there, and even invoked the Emergencies Act in order to do so. And where to go? Nobody's talking about it, right? So how convenient that something that was a grassroots movement that the people actually were starting to get some ground with and starting to progress with suddenly was wiped off the face of the earth thanks to this whole situation in Ukraine. Not that these things are linked necessarily, but what I'm trying to say is that we have to keep these other things in mind, that these things are still happening. And these convoys, whether or not you agree with what their position is or anything along those lines, they still have effects on the supply chain, on logistics, and everything else happening. So I just wanted to at least bring this up. And this one here that was, I think this one is called the the USA Freedom Convoy. Hold on a second. I'm getting the Freedom Convoy USA 2022. Actually had to pull the plug on theirs because the People's Convoy was a much bigger one that was getting more traction and is on its way still to Washington, D.C. For tomorrow's State of the Union address, right? Which I believe is tomorrow. I'm pretty sure it's March 1st, but if it's not, you guys let me know. I'm pretty dang sure it's tomorrow, though. Okay, so now, and then just to kind of give you guys a interesting tidbit of information about tomorrow's State of the Union address. I want you guys to just see how this is all going. I mean, look, like we try not to dive into politics on this channel, okay? And this isn't political. I'm not sharing this for political reasons. I'm sharing this because what they're saying is that tomorrow the president will highlight inflation and the war in Ukraine and suggest how they may be connected. So thank God we finally had our scapegoat for why things are just so terrible around here, right? So we're seeing that happen now, and this connection is going to be made, and that's going to be the discussion and everything else related to why Russia is now actually the reason for all of our problems, which I think a lot of people were already theorizing before all this started, right? Well, you get a fall guy like Russia to do something stupid, and then you then turn around and blame the entire world's economy on that exact situation and that decision. And then you say, well, look, I mean, everything was kind of getting better, but then this happened. So, you know, it's not really our fault anymore. This is why now. And it's really upsetting to me because I think that that's exactly what we're seeing. And regardless of who was in charge or what party had power or anything like that, this is what I expect at this point in time from our loving federal government, which seems to well, I think we all can agree that the campaign cycle is more important than you and I's everyday life. And that's just how it is now. Okay, so now let's talk about some other stuff. Okay, and I do want to mention Mark Fallos. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And Mark Fallos again. Right. So, and here's the thing. When it comes to all these other organizations that do things in the sense of like looting and rioting and protests, and then there's no response. But then when you see things happening like what happened up in Canada, that's the double standard. That's just where we are at this point in our lives. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. The other thing is that I'd be curious to find out, and this is just something out of curiosity more than anything else, but with what's happening in Russia right now, I'm not Russia, Ukraine, right? With a Russian invasion of Ukraine and with the enemy at your doorstep and missiles flying and rockets, destroying buildings and everything else that's going on there, are we seeing any looting or anything like that happening there from the general populace? Are the people there using that opportunity of lawlessness to steal TVs? Or are they picking up AKs and trying to defend what is theirs? And that could also be an indicator of a different culture and a different society where people still have a level of pride in what it is that they're protecting, which we may not see in our own country based on the fact that people are willing to do those types of acts so frequently during a time of emergency. This is just something to consider and things that I definitely want to keep an eye on. Okay, so I do want you guys to listen to some of this real quick, okay? All right. And I've been trying my best to figure out the right way to have this conversation without sounding like some kind of a sympathizer or a propagandist or anything like that. It's not my intention here, and I hope you guys understand that. And you know me well enough, right? We're good to go here. Okay, but there's a lot of talk right now about Vladimir Putin's Putin. I don't know where I'm at with this, but anyway, about his mental capacity and his mental state, right? His mental well-being is being analyzed by experts across the board throughout mainstream media as well as in our own government. And our officials are concerned about his mental state because some of the decisions he's making seem extremely flagrant. And it's very odd that he would take some of these actions when they have no logic or a reason behind them. So that's what we're hearing, right? I mean, I hear it all the time. I've been had people telling me that. I've had people on phone calls with me, personal friends of mine, say these exact things, and it's usually because of the echo chamber, of course. But here's the thing, okay? This is what we're seeing on mainstream media. His mental state's questioned by a growing number of U.S. officials. Even good old Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice called Vladimir Putin his recent behavior erratic. Okay, this is very erratic. Okay, so the guy's going to war with the country. And people look at that as being a crazy concept. This is crazy. Why would anyone do this unless they were deranged, right? But that's not always how these things work. And I just want you guys to keep in mind, okay? This is just something we have to keep in mind. Understand, this person may not be crazy and may have a plan. And we have to remember that there's strategies involved here that go way back to the art of war, right? When you are weak, appear strong, and when you are strong, appear weak. This whole concept of the Ukrainian, military as well as their civilian fighting force being able to drive back Russia and fight off this foreign aggression and win the war is very strategic if you look at it in the frame of the art of war, right? Oh, Russia, we're just not strong enough to take over this other country. We're just not strong enough to defeat these people, right? And oh, by the way, the mainstream media is helping fuel that debate now and fuel that strategy because, Vladimir Putin is just crazy. He's mentally ill. There's something wrong here. And these things, okay, are things we have to keep in mind because, okay, the other side of the equation is what's being propped up. Okay, now I will go ahead and switch to that because that is what's important. Now, I want to make this comparison not because I'm trying to belittle anybody or not because I'm trying to, promote anyone either. Okay. This is a later frame. We'll talk about this soon. Trust me, it matters. But I did not do that transition very well now, did I? Okay. Where is the other guy? Okay. All right. President Zelensky of Ukraine, right? The comedian president who is rising to the moment. Okay, now understand, see the difference of those two stories. You have mentally ill Putin, and then you have the strong fighter, Zelensky, who's on the ground, with his forces, trying to get into the heat and make things happen. All right. And we see Putin is, probably hiding in a shelter or whatever he's doing. He's not on the front lines, which is just unreasonable to expect in all honesty. Would we expect, I don't know, our current president to be on the front lines in a battle? I don't think so. And I don't think I'd want to be on those front lines if he was anyway. But what I'm trying to say is that you guys, the mainstream media is trying to push this whole narrative. They're pushing the narrative that Vladimir Putin, who served in the KGB for 15 years and is a strong arm of Russia that has risen to power after studying law and doing the proper channels when it comes to running through politics and that structure of a country. We're comparing his mental state as being, ill because of his erratic behavior to the Ukrainian president, who is, the strong-willed, strong lion of Ukraine, who before this whole situation before he was a president, was an actor and a comedian who played the president on TV, who then became the president after only being in politics for like 3 years or something like that. Look, I'm not belittling Zelensky at all. Ronald Reagan was an actor, right? And he did pretty good when it came to foreign affairs. So I'm not trying to say that he's not qualified or that we shouldn't, revere him or anything like that. If his actions are genuine on the ground and he's there supporting those people in the best way he can and physically supporting them, then power to him and great for that guy for doing those things, because I don't think a lot of people in his position, especially in a leadership position like his, would actually be doing that. So I think that's awesome. But what I will say is that why would we discount Vladimir Putin and his mental capabilities and the fact that he has a plan for how this is all going to turn out, more so than what we would, expect from a politician who's only been in the game for 3 years and before that was a comedian and an actor. There's no reason behind it besides propaganda, right? And because they can't explain exactly what's going on right now, the best explanation is insanity, because there's no reason to explain it at that point. These are just things that I think about, and then I try to share with you all. I have nothing against President Zelensky. Are there reasons that I should? Maybe, based on the deep, dark internet. But you know what? I can't verify a lot of that information, so I'm not going to. But what I will say is when it comes to Vladimir Putin, we do know that he was an intelligence officer for 15 years. The guy is not dumb. I don't know why anyone's going to assume that. And if you are assuming that, and if we are assuming that as a country, we are falling right into the trap of the most obvious strategy of war written out in the art of war for us to read for ourselves. So it bothers me to see this stuff happening, because it's not helpful at all. And in fact, it's probably dangerous, right? Anyway, let's kind of keep moving forward here. But I do see a lot of these things happening, and I think people are going to discount it because they're scared, honestly. Now, are we going to World War III? 68% of people said it's soon. That's okay. And you know what? I mean, I think there's a good reason to believe that at this point in time. And we don't even know for sure if Russia is going to be the reason why it starts, right? There could be a lot of other things that could occur right now that could push us into that territory. But what I will say is that if that does happen, we're not in a great spot. The supply chain's totally effed up, and we are in a situation where we can't get the resources we need. And what do you think would happen if the military suddenly had to deploy on multiple fronts with a lack of logistics and resources in order to keep that supply chain flowing steady? They would tap into what they did back during World War II, most likely, which was to have the civilians pitch in and do their part and donate the things that they are no longer allowed to have in order to help support the effort. And I am concerned about that in some ways, just because of how difficult it is to get the things we need, especially considering most of it comes from overseas, especially when you talk about things like semiconductors and microchips. Imagine the federal government saying, everybody turn in your PlayStations and your iPhones because we need the semiconductors that are inside of them in order to kind of keep our drones up and running. And you guys actually have a ton of them, so we just kind of need that. These are things we have to really keep in mind that are possible down here with all this stuff happening, okay? Now, there's a lot of questions here in the chat, and I'm not ignoring you guys, I promise. It is hard to look at it all, but these are things to consider. And one thing I will say, and this is what I want everyone to kind of keep in mind, okay? And Grayman Prepping's here. Thank you so much for being here. And I do want to say, Jason Culver, thank you. I appreciate it. Just trying to share my thoughts, because at this point, you can digest as much information as you want and find as much information on the internet as possible when it comes to these topics. But you have to really ingest everything you can and develop your own informed opinion as to what is happening in order to justify your moving forward. Because otherwise, if you just eat everything by the spoon that's being fed to you right now, you're going to just fall into the same trap as the everyone else trap, right? And that is going to be an issue when things actually get hot. And keep in mind, don't forget, one, nobody left Ukraine until Ukraine was under attack. And those highways were clogged and the gas stations were empty and everybody was fleeing all at once. And number two, a lot of that's because the government told them it would be fine until it wasn't. So don't find yourself on the boat of waiting for the government to tell you you're good to go. That's never going to be a good option, okay? Now, let's move on to this other story. And we're talking about cyber attacks sometimes here, right? We're worried about cyber attacks. And honestly, give me 1 second, guys. I do have something else that maybe you might find relevant, okay? And I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to share this information or not, but I just will, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? I probably should, right? Give me 1 second here. I got to pull it up. But there's a lot going on, okay? Okay. And let me see if I want to be able to share this, but without telling everybody my entire life story in the process, okay? All right. I can do this. I am a real person. Sometimes. I don't know. Let me go ahead and get this going. I appreciate you guys' patience, by the way, too. I really do. But this information is relevant, and it's also something that I think is important for preparedness. So I want to make sure that we all have the same, access to this information if possible. And I'm still missing it. Where did it go? Yes, this is all correct. Oh, did it go there? Okay, I'll just go ahead for it. And one thing that I have going on that you guys know about is some certain affiliations and stuff like that, right? I work with other companies once in a while because it's one way to keep the channel rolling, and it's another way to give you guys access to certain product reviews or even just, equipment that I might not otherwise have access to be honest with you guys. So let me tell you about what Mirror Safety just sent me, okay? And I want you guys to kind of keep this stuff in mind because it actually does matter. And here is my link to Mirror Safety. If you guys are looking for that stuff and you want to support the channel at the same time, that link will do that I just posted in the live chat. But I'm going to share an email with you all right now that I don't even know if I'm supposed to share or not. But at this point, I guess it is what it is, right? But things are not good in their situation. And I think that we should probably keep an eye on what they have going on based on the fact that it's probably relevant to us, because I think that this stuff, when it comes to PPE, especially around CBRN, nuclear and biological and everything else that we're worried about in regards to a World War III scenario, I think this stuff is probably relevant to you guys. So here is what they're telling me. And I don't think they'll get mad at me, but I guess we'll find out. Okay. Oh, well. Whoop. I care about you guys, so you can see this, I guess. So basically, right now their demand is 3 times higher than it was in the busiest day of 2020. Okay? Understand how busy that was. Understand how panic bought all this, PPE was at that time. Okay? They're 3 times higher demand now. Okay? Their current supply, if they have the same demand, and it's only going to last for the next 14 days. So if this demand of 3x over what the busiest day in 2020 remains, you have 2 weeks to buy this stuff or they're out. This is just what they sent me. So I don't know I don't know if the public's supposed to know this or not. But all I'm trying to say is that this is an issue. And so they have CM 6M gas masks in stock and 7M gas masks and the kids ones too. And those are legit. And I'm telling you guys right now, if you need gas masks and you want to be able to shoot rifles and stuff with them at the same time, there's no better company than Mirror Safety. And you will see a video, I'm hoping tomorrow, where I actually have to go shoot a bunch of guns and wear gas masks and give you my opinion on what optics and what cheek welds and everything worked while doing that. And it's going to be pretty awesome. But this was information that I just got. You can see here, it's Sunday, February 27th that this was sent to me. I mean, this is all happening, man. I'm just saying. And if you guys want your gas masks and stuff, like now's the time, I guess, because people are freaking out and they're buying it. And I just want you guys to know that this is it's important. Okay, so Dorsai Sharon Yoshi says the convoy on I-44 left Joplin, Missouri this morning. Okay, thanks for putting that out there. They are expected to show up at DC tomorrow for the State of the Union in order to exercise their First Amendment rights and tell the White House why they need these mandates gone. So good for them for trying to do something rather than just sit on the sidelines and wait to see what happens. So and Goofy Roofy, they do make gas masks like that, but it'd be like you'd have to get a modified one. So you would get one that's for like a baby and you could stick a small dog in it, I guess. But yeah, they do have like the cage style gas mask for babies because the babies can't, wear one on their head. So they do have that stuff indeed. Now, I want to go ahead and move on to this cyber attack situation because we got a little off topic, but I don't know. I just felt like sharing that email with you guys because I just feel like it is a big deal, especially if you're looking for that type of protection. So this happened, and I think that it's just something we need to keep an eye on. Okay. 2 satellite outage knocks out thousands of Enercon's wind turbines. And I believe this is in Germany. And basically what they're saying is 5,800 wind turbines were knocked out because their access to remote control of said turbines was taken out. And they're saying that this is basically a cyber attack. They can't pinpoint it or say for sure who was involved at this point in time, but it did happen almost simultaneously with the invasion of Ukraine. So these things happen. We know these things can happen. You want to get into the details of all this and you want to find out more about how this all works when it comes to hacking into satellites and taking out remote control of wind turbines in order to limit power consumption and production, then go for it. But I am not the guy to sit here and try to reverse engineer this whole situation for you and exactly explain what happened. What I'm just trying to say is that these cyber attacks already are occurring and they are clearly targeting energy, right? But keep in mind that anyone can do a cyber attack from anywhere, under any guise, and under any name, and just claim that it was someone else. Or someone else can claim that they were the ones who committed it. And unless someone else argues that claim, there's really no reason to verify it. So these are definitely weird times we're in. It's kind of like the whole anonymous taking up the fight thing, right? Great. The hacker group wants to help Ukraine. Do your thing. Sure. But now you also just gave liability to anyone else who gets involved with cyber attacks on Russia to a anonymous hacker group. So now anyone can just have free reign, right? So if another country wants to jump in there and start wreaking havoc, they can just say, well, it's probably anonymous, and that's difficult, and Russia can literally do the same thing. So these are weird times we're in. There's too much information, and especially in a time of war. We're talking about on-the-ground logistics, troop movements, heavy artillery. We're talking about nuclear capabilities and nuclear alertness and everything else, right? Man, is there a lot of information. We sure are just being spoon-fed every single bit of information surrounding every single thing that's happening over there, aren't we? It's interesting, actually. Is there anything classified? I mean, I know there is, but what I'm trying to say is, does it feel like it? Okay, so I want to go ahead and move on to this next thing. This is going to be like a rapid fire, so stick with me here. We're going to rapid fire through. Consequences, man. Catastrophic consequences as to what's happening right now. Well, let's first talk about the stock market, okay? Stock market. Dow tumbled, oil surged. Great. Real basic, but it is interesting. The Dow tumbled 179 points, okay? 0.5%. And the NASDAQ, I believe, actually went up. So interesting times. Can you explain some of that to me? Not necessarily, I don't think, because money is moving around in very strange ways right now. It's getting, put into precious metals. It's getting put into crypto. It's getting put all over the place because now that these banks are shut down and people's assets are being frozen, they're going to find somewhere else for those assets to be. At the same time, when I see the NASDAQ going up, even though it's only 0.5 percentage point, during hot conflict with a major superpower, I got questions, okay? And at the same time, you have to understand this market and this economy has been inflated and built on a bubble for so long now that this thing has got to pop at some point. And when it does, oh my gosh, not to mention the fact that why hasn't it popped yet with this all going on? With everything from the last 2 years going on? when it does pop, it's going to be really bad. Just my opinion. I'm throwing it out there, okay? Not a financial advisor. Don't do anything based on what I say. There's my disclosure there, I guess. Okay, now let's talk about cryptocurrency, because it's just something to keep an eye on regarding this whole situation, right? Wait, good old Bitcoin, right? Here we are. It's up 14.85% today. I have a feeling there's a lot of people with a lot of money in certain countries right now that might be putting that money somewhere less accessible and less limited. Okay, then I want to talk about this thing that I showed you earlier that is now relevant and that we have to talk about. Okay, Jason Clover, thank you, Magic, for all your diligent hard work. Look, I don't necessarily consider what I do to be overly diligent or overly hard work, but what I do think is that these conversations are necessities at this time, right? During these times, we have to have each other's back. We have to talk to each other and be part of this community, because if this whole balloon goes up, then you and I both need to be able to take care of each other in the aftermath, okay? And we might not be neighbors, or we might not ever see each other in real life, but at the end of the day, we have a connection, and that matters more than, no connection at all. So I think it's important, and I do think that this is a good place for us all to be. Now, here's something we really need to keep an eye on, okay? Because this affects every dang thing in the entire planet. And if you guys are worried about nuclear war because of what it will do to the planet, then you should definitely be worried about this too, because this is going to be a global issue, and it could cause a nuclear war itself. Let's see what happens, right? But Ukraine crisis could trigger an oil supercycle, okay? So, and up here you have, breaking news. Peter Anderand, oil markets are worse off than many traders realize. Okay, so oil is obviously the lifeblood of everything that happens on this planet, whether or not it's from energy, whether or not it's from creating plastics and synthetics, whether or not it's just something we have wars about. It is so important to everything when it comes to geopolitics and when it comes to just our ability to sustain life in the sense of enough energy to sustain the population we currently have. A supercycle, what is it? Okay, so an oil supercycle is when oil goes up in price and doesn't stop for a very long time. In fact, it goes up for years and sometimes even decades. And that is what we need to be concerned about, because basically, if this oil just keeps going up from this point on, we are really screwed in many ways. Already, it is at $100 a barrel. Brent crude, $100.99. WTI, $95.72, up $4 though just recently. So these are things we definitely have to be concerned about. And we talked about this a month ago, even longer, saying that, if oil hits $100, it's going to be difficult. And if oil hits $100, things get tough. And at that time, I'm not calling anybody out here, but at that time, you still had a lot of naysayers saying Russia's not going to invade. Nothing will happen in Ukraine. This is all just fear porn or whatever else you want to call it. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that word in a live stream, but whatever. All I'm saying is that people are wrong sometimes, okay? So look, am I always right? No, but if I'm wrong, I'll tell you I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll learn from that mistake. But at the same time, I'm not generally putting myself in a position to be wrong, because I'm not ever set in stone on any particular outcome. If you're set in stone about a solution before it's ever provided, how do you know that that's going to be the solution? You are just limiting your options at that point. Don't limit yourself. Have as many options as humanly possible at this point in time. And this super cycle scenario can definitely happen. And in fact, I had another article pulled up, but I must have, ditched it at some point. But I'll try to find it real quick, because you know what? I will do my best here to take care of you all right? Here we go. See, it was that fast. It's not that hard to do. Let me go ahead and share this now, which is the world on the verge of a new commodity supercycle? Okay, and it's in relation to oil, but other commodities as well. And interestingly enough, this article is from March of 2021. Okay, a year ago. So a year ago, without this Ukrainian invasion, we were actually worried about the concept of a super cycle because of how bad things were then. If you think the way things are now isn't going to make things worse moving forward, you're wrong. Okay. And I don't generally say things like that flat out, but things are going to get worse moving forward from here. They have the potential to get better at some point in time. Yes, but right now I think we're on the downhill. And so we have to go downhill a little bit before you're ever going to get back uphill, right? Now, the super cycle situation was a threat a year ago. You think it's going to, just be better by now and then also sustain what's happening in Ukraine? I don't know. But I do know that the likelihood of it existing is much higher now than it was a year ago when it was worthy enough to have a news article created about it based on the supply chain and the demand and supply of oil. Another way of looking at a super cycle is that the demand continually rises, but the supply can't meet it. And so basically it's that you're already past your capacity and you're just asking for more no matter what, and you can't produce it. So that's kind of like a very layman's way of looking at it, but this is where we're at. And this is something I want you guys to understand. These consequences of what's happening right now are catastrophic for us. Economically, financially, our quality of life is going to go down. And no matter how we look at this, we are in a bad situation. Yes, is there a possibility of, a nuclear exchange? Of course. And would those consequences also be catastrophic? 100%. Obviously, that's worst case scenario by 1,000. It just is worst case scenario. I don't think there's many other worst case scenarios besides maybe planet killing asteroid and possibly Yellowstone or something like that, right? But at the end of the day, we are here. We're here. This is the edge of the knife. You guys are on it with me right now. If things go one way or the other, it makes a huge difference as to where we move forward. But like I said before, earlier in the stream, we have already gone around the corner. We've gone around the corner of things being able to normalize. Okay. Normalize. Oh, good old back to normal. When was that phrase even coined, and when will it ever be true? Probably never again. Because honestly, what kind of ride are we even on right now? If you're at Busch Gardens, in Tampa, Florida, we started out on the big bad wolf, and we're on Montu at this point. And that was a terrible analogy, but I just went with it because, roller coasters as a kid, they scared the crap out of me, and I'm not going to lie to anybody about it. I have honesty here for you, okay? Now, let's see here. And Gerald Allen says, hate to say it, but MP pushes fear mongering or whatever you want to call it that doesn't need to be pushed. And, I guess if you want to look at it that way, Gerald, but it's what is it going to take for this to not be fear, mongering or whatever you want to call it? That justification, that term is a belittlement term that takes the content or the context of what's going on out of it and basically turns it back into normalcy bias. And instead, a month ago, when I'm discussing the concept of Ukrainian invasion, and the same type of people are there telling me that it will never happen, are now here just saying that this is just more fear, even though these things are actually happening and coming to fruition. So I'm not trying to have a I told you so moment. What I'm trying to say here is that you as a person, as someone who wants to be prepared, should remove that whole concept from your mind. If you feel like something is over the top, exaggerated, just ignore it. But the idea that everyone's pushing these narratives just because is asinine. Is it helping your preparedness, and are you learning something that can help you move forward or not? And that's the only light that you should look at it in. Honestly, I watch a lot of other preparedness channels. Don't always comment or honestly, because a lot of times I'm busy and I'm just doing it in the background to listen to some other great channels, okay? But what I want to say is that, do some people push things really far? Of course. And do some people underestimate the possibilities? Yes, they do. And do I listen to all of them? Yes. And you know why? Because one of them is probably going to be right. And at the end of the day, all it did was open my perspective to something that could help me be better prepared in the end. Just my opinion. Sorry to go on a rant, but I'm like, what is it going to take, man? I don't know what to tell you. With what we're watching right now, I don't know. Okay. I just don't know. One thing, you guys want to know something I'm trying to do right now in the sense of preparedness? It's boring, right? I'm not going to make a video about it because it's boring. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get some new tires. You know what? Tires are going up in price. They already have. I need some new tires. There you go. Not going to make a video about that. You know why? It's boring. So, just throwing that out there. And I had a good time with that one, to be honest with you. And I'm not mad at you, Gerald Allen. I'm just I'm just trying to say that like the fear mongering thing and everything that people try to throw out there about that stuff. When I'm here talking to you guys, it's me literally sharing you my opinions and thoughts as to what's going on and how I actually and personally feel about it and what I'm personally and actually doing about it. So if you don't agree with like my standpoint or what I'm doing, then just don't listen to it. But at the end of the day, it's not me trying to exaggerate anything in order to, stir people's fears. These are just real life things. That email I shared with you guys from Mirror Safety, I didn't fabricate it. So these are just things that are just being told to us directly, for our consumption. Eat it if you will. Now, anyway, Gray Man Prepping, thank you so much for being here. As always, Rip Curl, you're here too. I appreciate that as well. You guys, I got... all right, I'll read this one just because I can enjoy this. This is kind of fun, but DH says, "Hey folks, Canadian Prepper here. I got a secret message from President Biden. Some real stuff is coming." And I just enjoyed reading that, to be honest with you, because I could hear his voice while saying it. But you guys can look at that in that same vein if you'd like. But at the end of the day, I appreciate anyone trying to share information that they have that we might not otherwise receive. So however you want to frame it and whatever way you want to put it out there in order to get it out as far as possible might not, be everybody's cup of tea. But at the end of the day, give me all the info I can possibly get so I can have the best decision-making capabilities I can have. You guys are awesome. Look, I love you guys. I love being here on Monday nights. I have a great time. Let's do this again sometime. I think we should. Be really nice. So we're past the hour mark. I think it's going to be about time. And I really just want to make sure you guys understand. Let's prepare to the best of our abilities, and let's hope that nothing happens. I always hope that. I always hope that at the end of the day, this whole thing, just goes back to not mattering soon. Okay. That's what I prefer. Always, I want to be comfortable and enjoy my life. I don't want to be worried about what's going on in places like Ukraine. But as someone who wants to be prepared, it'd be irresponsible for me to not pay attention at all. So I'm doing what I can. But without anything else to say, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.